The book of Proverbs, if you haven't been with us, it's a book about life. It's a book about wisdom and folly, written by Solomon. And there's two characters, Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly. And what you need to know today as we approach the topic of sexuality is that Lady Wisdom is not a person. Lady Wisdom is just a set of rules, a set of instructions and consequences. Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly basically just tell you, this is how life works. It's like the law of gravity. If you jump off the building, you will go down. Lady Wisdom comes along and says, if you work hard, you'll prosper. If you use bad words, you will kill people. If you use your wealth wisely, God will bless you. Lady Wisdom is an impersonal force who tells you how life works. And so is Lady Folly. And so today, as we approach the topic of sexuality, I want you to know that several things are going to happen in you today. Number one, some of you are going to be warned, because Lady Folly and Lady Wisdom are going to speak about sexuality and basically say, this is one of the most powerful forces in the world, a God-given gift, but it has become so marred by sin and by our world that it can kill you if you cross certain boundaries. Some of you will be warned today, and it's good. It's going to be firm. It's going to be warning. It's going to be like a policeman stopping you and simply looking in the window and saying, if you do this again, I'm going to write you up, and I might even take away your license. It's going to be firm for some of you. Others of you are going to be wounded today, and that's because you've already crossed the line. And I have a feeling that's most of us. And in this world, if you haven't crossed the line sexually and fallen in some way into impurity and suffered consequences, then you're some kind of an angel. I mean, you're just like very rare. Most people have fallen and are falling and have fallen all last week and are sitting here worried about this message because you're going to feel sort of guilty. That Lady Wisdom's going to wound you a little bit. And some of you are going to be wounded because you've been the victim of other people's sexual issues, and you're hurt. You're going to be hurt by what you hear today. I want you to know that. And some of you are going to be healed today because, along with Lady Wisdom, who's an impersonal force, you know, this is how life works. There's a God in the Bible who is a personal God, a God of grace, who wants to take you wherever you are and heal you and forgive you and restore you and break your chains and make you no longer slaves. So a lot is going to happen today, and I say that up front primarily because the book of Proverbs is not real grace-filled or friendly or nice. It's not that way. It's just very, here's the line, you cross it, here's what happens. And I just want you to know today as we touch on this, a variety of things are going to happen in your hearts. I'm going to show you 3 videos as we go along that all bring in the grace side of it, the healing side, the restorative side. So hopefully you'll leave on that note, but I do want you to know you're going to hear some of the hard stuff too. So let's pray together. God, it's your word, and it's not up to me to make up what to say. Lord, I'm the delivery person of what you've already given us, and that's your word in Proverbs. So I pray that as a messenger, you would allow me to transfer your words faithfully, but as a shepherd and pastor, I pray you would help me to shepherd a flock with grace and truth. So guide our time together. Use your word in each heart as you feel it needs to be used. In Jesus' name, amen. So, the book of Proverbs, again, it's a father-son discussion. If it was a father-daughter discussion, he probably used different imagery. Because it's a father-son, he's going to use the seductress, the woman, the prostitute, the adulteress, and that's no hit against women. It's just he's talking to a son, and the temptation comes in the form of women. If it was talking to a daughter, he'd probably be warning about the charming man who's going to allure you to the party and put something in your drink and, you know, steal your life away. But here's how it unfolds. There's 3 whole chapters. In the first 9 chapters, there's 3 whole chapters devoted to this topic, which basically says this is incredibly important. Of all the topics that Proverbs covers, none is covered with such passion and energy and warning as this one. And that's because it's so consequential. It's such a powerful gift from God, but it's been marred so much, it can hurt us. It's like Sex has been likened to a fireplace. As long as the fire is in the hearth, it can bring warmth and light and beauty to the home. But you take those logs and you put them out in the living room and the carpet, you can burn the house down. Sex is like that. Proverbs says that. If you use it right, boom, amazing. Use it wrong, burn the house down. And so what the father does in chapter 5, 6, and 7 is he gives 3 talks to his son. And I'm just going to take 2 of them, chapter 5, chapter 7, make a couple comments, show you some stories, real life stories, and try to lead you through this journey. So what the father does first in chapter 5 is he tells the son, look, this force of sexuality is a powerful, powerful force. It's so powerful that if you get too close to it, it will pull you over the edge. And it will bring consequences after the fact that it never tells you about ahead of time. So this is the big picture. It's a powerful force. If you get too close, you're going over, and it will never tell you the long term. It only tells you what you'll get tonight. That's the first message. Here's how it reads. My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Turn your ear to my words of insight, that you may maintain discretion and your lips may preserve knowledge. For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey. In other words, it's a powerful, attractive force. Her speech is smoother than oil. This sexual temptation will come to you in ways that are so sweet, so smooth, so soothing, so irresistible that it's going to be hard to resist. But in the end, she's as bitter as gall. And gall was a herb that was very, very bitter. In the end, she's as sharp as a two-edged sword. She's as smooth as oil up front. She's a two-edged sword at the end. She's as sweet as honey up front. She's as bitter as the bitterest herb you can imagine in the end. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She'll never tell you that she's taking you to a cemetery. She'll tell you she's taking you to the night of your dreams. But it's really a trip to the cemetery. She does not give thought to the way of life. She does not think about life. She thinks about tonight. She only thinks about tonight. Her paths wander aimlessly. She doesn't even know it. So he says to the son, this is a powerful force, and it has no foresight. It only thinks of immediate gratification of desire. So son, here's what you should do. My son, listen to me. Don't turn aside from what I say. Keep a path far from her. Don't even go near to the door of her house, because if you do, you're going to lose your honor to others and your dignity to one who is cruel. Strangers will feast on your wealth, and your toil will enrich the house of another. You're going to lose in a lot of different ways, my son. If you get too close to her, she will pull you over. This is a riptide. If you get out there, you're going. This is a cliff. If you get too close, you're falling. This is a gravitational pull. If you get right here, it's going to throw you down. So don't even get close, my son. This is a powerful, powerful force. And, you want to get close to the way God said to do it. And he talks a lot in chapter 6 about marriage and enjoying marriage as a gift from God, enjoying sexuality in the right context. And it's powerful. Enjoy it. But if you go the wrong direction with it, watch out. It will take you on a ride to the cemetery. And then he says, at the end of your life, you're going to groan. At the end of your life, you're going to groan. You're going to regret it in the long run when your flesh and your body are spent. And you're going to say to yourself, how I hated discipline, how my heart spurned correction, how I would not obey my teachers or turn my ear to my instructors, and I was soon in serious trouble in the assembly of God's people. In other words, at the end, you're going to say, was it really worth it to get addicted to the pornography? You're going to say in the end, was it really worth it to have that affair? Was it really worth it to lose my reputation in the community? Was it really worth it to wreck the family? Was it really worth it to have sex before I got married? Was it really worth it? You're going to wonder, my son, in the end, if that invitation was really worth the price. We're going to watch a video of a young woman who wanted to stay pure, intended to stay pure, but got too close and got pulled over the edge and regretted it. Let's watch.
Yeah, my first boyfriend I met when I was a sophomore in high school. The first 6 months, everything was great. After a little while, the topic of sex did come up, but he knew I wouldn't do that. He knew my morals, and he was fine with it. Well, he started cheating on me, I don't know, after probably a year, and I found out a couple of times, and he said he was sorry, and he loved me so much. He's so sorry that he would do that, and, I wanted to be the forgiving girlfriend and the sweet girlfriend. I wanted to feel accepted, and I wanted to feel beautiful and loved and special, and that is how I was told I was gonna get it, by those guys. We decided to have sex. I remember coming home and just bawling, and because he was my neighbor, so I walked home by myself just bawling, and I remember sitting in my shower and just crying and being like, what did I do? I had a purity ring that I was wearing, even during, that made me feel awful. That was a huge part of the reason I wasn't gonna tell a single person, was because I had my good Christian face on when I went to church, and then I would go home and do something else. About a week after that, it happened again, and then 2 days after everything happened, he broke up with me for a girl he'd already started dating, and I was completely crushed. You can imagine how, I thought that by giving him everything, I would keep him, and actually I lost him right after. The biggest thing that I felt was dirty. I felt so dirty, just like I had been used, and I'd been one of those girls that I'd never wanted to be. I thought I was gonna marry that guy, and now I'm not. I ruined my wedding night. My husband's gonna be sitting there, and if he waited for me and I didn't wait for him, that's a gift that I wanted to give him. And that's something that I wish I could give him, and I wish I could take back to give him. I didn't want to tell God about it. I felt like there was no way back. And I felt like there's no way God's gonna forgive me. There's no way that he's gonna use this. I had a huge breakdown one night. When I went into my room, and I turned off all the lights, and I put on my worship music, and I just broke down for the first time about it. I sat there and was just could not stop crying. I was just uncontrollably crying and just sitting there going, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And it was the first time in a long time that I'd really felt God and really felt his forgiveness.
And so some of you right now are warned by Lady Wisdom. Don't do that. Some of you are wounded because you've already done that. And Lady Wisdom, again, is not very personal. She just sort of stands there and says, I told you. But Jesus, in John 8, says to a woman caught in adultery, the Jews wanted to stone her, and they're all standing there with their stones, and he looked at them all and said, he was without sin among you, let him throw the first stone. They all dropped their stones one by one and left. Then he looks at the woman and says something very different than Lady Wisdom. Lady Wisdom says, I told you. Jesus says, woman, did no one condemn you? And she said, no one, Lord. And he said, neither do I condemn you. Go your way. Let's sin no more. And so Jesus comes along and says, there's grace, there's forgiveness, there's healing. And I want you to understand that some of you right now are warned. Some of you are wounded by this. But I hope all of you know that you can be healed and forgiven and restored by the God of grace. What happens in the narrative of Proverbs is chapter 6 comes along, and then chapter 7. We'll skip chapter 6. You can read it in your notes. Chapter 7, he tells his son a story about another young man. And he talks about one day where he was looking out the window and he saw this young man headed toward the street where the temptress lives. He says it like this to his son. At the window of my house, I looked down through the lattice, and I saw among the simple, I noticed the young man, a youth who had no sense. He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house at twilight as the day was fading, as the dark of night set in. The youth is either naive, or he's foolish and willfully headed into trouble, or he's liberated and doesn't believe there are any rights or wrongs, like our culture today really doesn't believe there is necessarily anything wrong with just casual sex or sex outside of marriage, so the lines are blurred, the lines are gone. Whatever, this young man is walking in the wrong direction. And the father says to the son as he carries on, he says, then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute, and with crafty intent. She's unruly, she's defiant, her feet never stay at home, Now she's in the street, now she's in the squares. At every corner she lurks. This woman, my son, is at every corner. She's at the workplace. She's on the internet. She is on your iPhone. She is in the movie. She is on the TV screen. She's dancing at halftime in the sports event. She is lurking everywhere, my son. And in this case, I looked out and I saw she took hold of him. She grabbed him. She actually got him and kissed him. And with a brazen face, she said, "Today I've fulfilled my vows. I have food left over from church, food from my fellowship offerings. We had a fellowship meal at church and I got leftovers." She even going to use a religious food to seduce the guy. "So I came out to meet you. I looked for you and I found you." And she tries to make him feel special, like he's the only one on that website at that moment. And yet it said right before, she lurks at every corner, right? She's in every square. She's everywhere. But she makes him feel like he's the only one on the other end of the phone line. That's the way it works. "I came out, I looked for you, I found you. I've covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I've perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's drink deeply of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. The man, i.e. my husband, is not at home. He's gone on a long journey. He took his purse filled with money. He won't be home till full moon." She says, tonight is all that matters. And so many of our songs, our love songs, are about tonight. Tonight is the night. Tonight. But the songs are never about the night after tonight and the rest of life after tonight. The songs are just about tonight. Tonight. And that's the way the temptress always is, whether it's a guy or a girl. It's always about right now. It's never about life. So with persuasive words, she leads him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. And all at once, he followed her to the night of his dreams. He followed her to the most incredible experience ever. He followed her to something that he will love for the rest of his life, right? That's not what it says. It says he followed her like an ox going to a slaughterhouse. Now, that's a gross imagery. If you've ever been to a slaughterhouse, and I have, I had to go when I was a pre-vet major at Michigan State, I had to go and watch. It is the ugliest thing you have ever seen. And this father says he is going to a slaughterhouse. But he thinks it's the night of his dreams. He's like a deer stepping into a noose. He's like somebody where an arrow is going to pierce his liver. He's like a bird darting right into a snare. He just doesn't know. It's not going to be the night of his life. It's going to cost him his life. You see, it never tells you about tomorrow. Never tells you about the cost. It just tells you about right now. You can have an experience that will really make you feel complete. So he appeals to the son. He said, "Now, my son, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Don't let your heart turn to her ways. Don't get near her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death." Her path is a path to a cemetery, not to just this wonderful place of your dreams. And how does that play out today? A young girl goes to a party. She knows that the friends are kind of on the edge there and that they're going to be drinking a lot and partying a lot. She knows it's sort of the cool crowd, but she goes. And next thing you know, some guy offers her a drink laced with a date rape drug. She didn't expect that. Nobody told her that was what she was going to get. A guy, goes on the internet and there's a pop-up and he goes there and then it goes there and then it goes there. And next thing you know, he's like down a trail. Or he goes over to a friend's house to spend the night and it's a bunch of cool guys and he knows that. But what he didn't know is that when he gets there, one of them is going to pop in a pornographic video. Nobody told him that. Nobody told him that. A woman goes on Facebook to connect with an old high school friend because she's kind of lonely and she's bored after 30 years of marriage. And I wonder what so-and-so's up to now. And next thing you know, one conversation leads to another and there's this emotional connection and it turns into more. A man notices a new girl at work, and he's not getting the strokes at home, but this girl makes him feel young and fully alive. I wonder how I could get closer to her, because she really makes me feel great. It happens in a lot of different ways. It's so subtle, and it always appeals to right now, but it doesn't tell you about the cost of a lifetime. Let's watch a story of a young man in the modern day that got too close, got pulled in, and had to do some hard work to get out. Let's watch.
I grew up in church my whole life. Ever since I was really small, I was in church. I knew all the things you were supposed to do and all the things that weren't acceptable for, a good Christian kid. But as I grew up, I was really into internet porn. It started out just simple, but as time progressed, I became numb even to that. And so I had to look for more extreme things to catch my interest. I told myself, this isn't that bad. It wasn't like drugs or anything like that. The problem was that it was always just a choice that I kind of made, and it was just me. So I would be at church and I was volunteering already. Then I'd go home, and as soon as I get home, I would get on my computer and I would start looking at stuff. Everybody saw this well-behaved Christian kid at church, and they had no idea that when I went home, it was a different person. Guilt doesn't even begin to describe the thoughts that were going through my mind. I used to think, as I was in my bedroom or whatever room, I was like, man, God's looking down on me right now, and this is what he sees. This is the worst feeling, because I had been taught, oh, God loves you. Well, how could he love this? No matter how much I wanted to quit, it was just like, within a week, I would be back at it again. And every time I quit, I came back worse than before. My mindset was, if anybody finds out about this, then they're gonna think about me differently. Because if they knew who I really was, and they wouldn't want to be around me anymore, and they're gonna look at me differently, and they won't accept me. My thoughts started getting really dark because of all of the guilt. I started having suicidal thoughts. And I was like, I can't keep living this double life. It's too much. I knew I needed to get help. So when I finally started telling people about it, most of the people were surprised, but they weren't mean about it or anything like that. Everybody was really accepting because everybody had their own struggles. And actually, I found that a lot of people shared my struggle. They understood. And that was the biggest thing when I was caught up in it all. It's like nobody understands. This is my problem. Nobody will understand when I go to them. When I finally was able to get all these things off of my chest, it was just like this transformation. Everything came off my shoulders, and it was just, I could breathe for the first time. And it was just so different from anything I had ever experienced. It was so free.
So Lady Wisdom looks at that and says, I told you so. I told you not to start down that path. I told you you'd get trapped. I told you you'd feel like committing suicide. I told you it was a pathway to a cemetery, right? Yeah. And you felt like killing yourself, right? Yeah. But God comes along and says, I told you you could be set free, right? Yeah. And I opened up and I confessed my sin to others, and I was healed, and they accepted me, and I've been undoing that. See, there's both sides of this. Lady Wisdom is pretty firm, and she wounds you and she warns you, and the God of grace comes along and says, I can heal you. I can heal you. But both sides are true. And what I want to do right now is something very interesting, because see, Lady Wisdom is about how life works. It's a set of principles and rules almost that could be not even in the Bible. They could just be somebody speaking today from experience. And I was reading an article this week from the New York Times. And that's not exactly, the Bible. That's not exactly conservative. Sometimes when I read Proverbs, I feel like it's so out of date. Okay, I'm going to say this stuff, but it's like trying to sell a Model T to people who are driving Model S Tesla electric cars. This is so out of date. What are you talking about? But what? Lady Wisdom is so current. It's incredible. I found this article. I'm going to read it out loud to you. It's in your notes, the last 3 pages. It's going to go on the screen. I'm going to read it aloud to you because I want you to see a modern woman who had an affair and who was the victim of an affair, And I want you to see her talking, and it sounds exactly like Lady Wisdom from the book of Proverbs. Now, again, this is going to warn some of you who have not done this yet. It's going to wound some of you who've already been through this, who've committed this sin of adultery or have been the victim of it. It's going to wound some of you. But after it, we're going to see a video, and again, we're going to see the God side of how he can heal and restore. So I invite you to read along with me, and just imagine, instead of a father talking to a son in the book of Proverbs, imagine this being a woman talking to you, and imagine she's Lady Wisdom, and she's now talking to you as a son or a daughter. It's called A Room Full of Yearning and Regret, New York Times, December 9th, 2010. Not long ago, the friend of a friend spent the night in a hotel room, which is sometimes what you do when you find out your spouse has been having a year-long affair. His flight was sadly predictable. It's all many of us are capable of after discovering such a betrayal, though I am sure he now realizes that mere movement is not a fix for that kind of agony. I know this for two reasons. Number one, I have had an affair, and number two, I've been the victim of one. When you unfurl these two experiences in the sunlight for comparison and measure their worth and pain, the former, having had an affair, is only marginally better than the latter, being the victim of one, and both, frankly, are awful. I recently offered my cheated upon view of things to my acquaintance, who has returned every night for a week to that hotel because he cannot bear to look at his wife. A couple of years ago, I offered the other side to a friend when she was considering having an affair. Start, I suggested to her, by picturing yourself in the therapist's office with your betrayed husband after you've been found out. And you will be found out. You will hear yourself saying you cheated because your needs weren't being met. The spark was gone. You were bored in your marriage. Your lover understands you better. One or another version of this excuse will cross your lips like some dark, knee-jerk, Hallmark card sentiment. I'm not saying these feelings aren't legitimate, it's just that they don't legitimize what you are doing. If you believe they did, your stomach wouldn't drop on your way out the door to your lovers. You wouldn't feel the need to shower before climbing into the marital bed after a liaison. You wouldn't feel like a train had struck you in the back when your son asked you why you forgot his lacrosse game the other day. When you miss a family function because of work, you get over it. When you miss a family function because you were in a hotel room with your lover, you feel breathless with misery. The great sex, by the way, is a given. When you have an affair, you already know you will have passionate sex. The urgency, newness, and illicit nature of the affair practically guarantee that. What you don't know, or perhaps what you don't allow yourself to think about, is that your life will become an unbearable mix of yearning and regret because of it. It will be difficult, if not impossible, to be in any one place with contentment. This is no way for an adult to live. When you're with your lover, you'll be working on your alibi and feeling loathsome. When you're with your spouse, you'll be dying to return to your love nest. When you're at home, everything in your life will look just a little bit out of register. The furniture, the food in your refrigerator, your children, your dog. Because you've detached yourself from your normal point of reference, and it now belongs to a reality that you have abandoned. You'll be pulled between two poles, one of obligation and responsibility, the other of pleasure and escape. And the stress of these opposing forces will threaten to split you in two. I met the man I cheated with early in my marriage. He was the beautiful twin brother of a friend, something like a young Errol Flynn, who for the younger generation, he was an actor way back that looked like Brad Pitt, okay? Make sense? I was entranced. My husband traveled a lot, and I took advantage of that, finding myself at my lover's apartment often, but at home with my husband during those ragged months, I was anxious and ill at ease. I should have been focusing on our new house, our new jobs, but my inability to resist the pull of the affair ruined all of that. I could not concentrate on our coupled life, and frankly, I did not care to. I knew I needed to stop it, but I didn't have the will to do so on my own. So I had to enlist my husband to tell him so that we could battle this together. So I admitted to the affair one evening after dinner. Almost 20 years after that confession, I can still remember how the whole world narrowed down to the two of us sitting there, that new truth congealing between us. Once the affair is out in the open, you will strive mightily to justify yourself. You will begin many sentences with the phrase, "I never meant to." But one look at the hollow-eyed, defeated form of your spouse will remind you that such a claim is beside the point. You can both get over this, yes, but the innocence will have gone out of your union, and it will seem as if a bone has been broken and healed, but one that rain or cold weather can set to throbbing again. So now take the other side. You discover your cheating spouse, as I once did, and what you experience is not far removed from post-traumatic stress. It's a form of shock. As your mind struggles to accommodate this wrenching reality, you won't be able to sleep or focus. Your fight or flight mechanism will go haywire. You'll become consumed with where your spouse is at any moment, even if you see him in the pool with your children. You will lose your appetite. Stress will blow out your metabolism. You will torture yourself with details known and imagined. You'll fit together the mysteries of his daily patterns like a wicked puzzle. Every absence or unexplained late night or new habit or sudden urge to join a gym, for instance, will suddenly make horrible sense, and you will wonder why you were so stupid. But as the writer Paul Thoreau says in one of his travel logs, it's very easy to plant a bomb in a peaceful, trusting place. And that is what the cheating spouse has done, and then detonated it. Sooner or later, your illicit, once beloved object of affection will become tawdry, wearying. You will come to long for simple, honest pleasures like making dinner with your sons or going out to the movies without having to look over your shoulder. On the other side, your spouse's philandering will cease to torment you, and instead the whole episode will leave you disgusted and bored and desirous to get out. You'll just want to be with someone who does what he says he's going to do, goes where he says he's going to go, and can be found at any time you need him because he's not hiding. I say all this by way of hope, believe it or not. Affairs are one of the adult world's few disasters that can be gotten over with a lot of time and kindness, but it has to burn out of you over months and months, flaming up and then subsiding as you get used to the fact. A great deal of comfort will come from your friends, many of whom will offer advice. Hate him, leave him, move on. That you should listen to politely and then reject. After all, the consequences of your decisions will be visited upon you, not your friends. They will be only too happy to amplify your confusion, listen to you cry, and then get into the car and drive home to their own intact families. In the end, your marriage may not need to be trashed, though mine was. The affairs metastasized in our relationship from the inside out. By the time all was said and done, there was little left to save. Our marriage had become like a leaf eaten away by caterpillars, where the petiole and midrib remain with some ghostly connective tracery in between, not even enough to hold a drop of rain. And I look at my parents. And how much simpler their lives are at the age of 75. Mostly because they haven't marred the landscape with grand-scale deceit. They have this marriage of 50-some years behind them, and it is a monument to success. A few weeks or months of illicit passion could not hold a candle to it. If you imagine yourself in such a situation, where would you fit an affair in neatly? If you were 75, which would you rather have? Years of steady, if occasionally strained devotion, or something that looks a little bit like the Iraqi city of Fallujah, cratered with spent artillery? From where I stand now, it all just looks like a cheap hotel room. Whether you're in that room to have an affair or to escape from the discovery of one. And despite the sex and the excitement, with the drama and the fix of everyone's empathetic attention, there is no view from this room that is worth having. That's what Lady Wisdom would say, right? There's no view from this room worth having. And this article's not 3,000 years old, outdated, antiquated, rejected. It's a bunch of old morals and guilt-ridden structures. No, this is a woman who's been through it, writing in the New York Times, and she sounds exactly like Lady Wisdom. There is no view from that room that is worth having. And so some of you feel wounded right now because you've been through that. Some of you feel warned, and you should. I encourage you to take that article home, it's in your notes, and just read it several times. Lady Wisdom would say, let that reality sink so deep into your heart that you'll never do that. That's what Lady Wisdom would say. And if you've already done it, you're wounded, you're hurt, can God take that? Can God restore that? Yeah. Let's watch a story of redemption.
Our marriage before everything happened was really pretty good. If someone had asked me if there were any warning signs about what was to come, I would tell them none.
I think that it was probably just like any other marriage after people first get married. You're looking for that person to make you happy. I'm looking for Cynthia to make me happy. She was looking for me to make her happy.
We didn't communicate feelings to each other. And so it became very like roommate versus partners for life.
Cynthia had gotten real busy with the church, so all of a sudden she was gone a lot more. And that was not a problem to begin with, but then it started to, I started to notice phone bill inconsistencies with the cell phone, a lot of calls to a certain individual.
Honestly, didn't cross my mind the first couple of times we talked, but once the line was crossed, I knew that I was connected in a deeper way than I should have.
She was coming home later at night, oftentimes. When I would ask a question about, did you see so-and-so or spend time with so-and-so, oftentimes I would get almost a ballistic type response. It was kind of putting together a puzzle, and that puzzle was pointing to, there's an affair going on here.
I was longing for someone to hear me when I'm crying and not think, here she goes again. This person was treating me in a way that I longed for my husband to treat me.
I think part of me didn't want to believe it was really going on, but another part of me had enough evidence that showed that it was. I approached a friend of mine who was an associate pastor. He was going to go back to the church and pull her out of a meeting and confront her with what was going on.
He looked me in the face and he just said, Cynthia, I've heard something, is it true? And I said, yeah, it's all true.
My fear was that I would do something that would be irreparable, whether it was going and filing for divorce, something that basically would not be able to be reversed.
I went home, I got in my bed, I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I didn't talk. I really wanted to die.
When Cynthia finally emerged from the bedroom, it was very awkward, almost wanting to avoid each other. There were moments where there was, where I lost my temper. There was the bitterness, the anger, where I didn't want to see her.
My kids definitely knew. Both were heartbroken. My son, in particular, had been studying the Ten Commandments. When he mentioned, thou shalt not commit adultery, I said, that's something I've done. And I just remember so vividly his head he just went down, he just wouldn't look at me.
There was a point where I think I was emotionally exhausted. I was feeling, I was part of this, that I had been part of that problem that had led her to want to go be with someone else. And at that point is when I kind of hit the floor. And I remember crying out to God and just what do I do?
It took a long while for me to see the big picture of what I had left behind in pursuit of my own desires.
There was a point when I did tell her that I forgave her. And I think even to today, that forgiving goes on. You know, there are moments when I think about it.
We're living proof that God does his most stunning work when things are hopeless and when they seem impossible. Because I'm telling you, it seemed impossible.
So I hope today you get the message that Lady Wisdom's very firm. She warns you, she wounds you, she tells you, here's the line, don't go over it. If you do, you know, all three of those stories, every one, I just realized, every one of those stories, the people wanted to die. And that's exactly what Lady Wisdom says. Her path is a pathway to death. But God comes along and says, I can bring life out of death. I bring resurrection. I'm in the business of rebuilding and restoring, and God can do that. He starts by forgiving your sin. And whatever sin you have committed, there is no sin that's a match for the grace of God. He will forgive you. You give that sin to him. Doesn't matter if you're the Apostle Paul, who murdered Christians before he was a believer. It doesn't matter if you're David, who's committed adultery, and through that adulterous liaison had Solomon, who ended up writing this book. It doesn't matter if you're Solomon, who ended up violating his own words and had 1,000 women. God can forgive, and then he can break your chains and begin to restore your life. And my prayer for you today is I hope you will be warned away from sin. But I also hope you'll be wooed to the grace of God and to the community of broken people we are, because our commitment is to do the journey together. No shame for where you've been, no shame a year from now. We'll do the journey together. Bring your sin into relationship with other people, with community, and let's work on it together. Lord, if it's an addiction, if it's a failure, if it's abuse, if it's divorce, if it's your third marriage, whatever it is, let's break the chains together. We're going to sing about that. I hope you'll stay and just sing this last song and just let it kind of be a release from all the heaviness here. Lord, we come to you as broken people, every one of us. We fall so far short, Jesus, from what you said, because you actually said, if you even look at another person with lust, you've already been in bed with them in your mind. You've already committed adultery. Your standards are so high, none of us come even close to purity. And so we come to you as a community of broken people today. And we ask you not just to forgive us and cleanse us, but help us to do the journey, break the chains that bind us, help us to live with victory, and then to communicate that to other people as well. So God, we just give our brokenness to you right now. And Jesus, we pray you would set us free. Amen.
There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. To break every chain, to break every chain, to break every chain. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. To break every chain, to break every chain. All sufficient. All sufficient sacrifice, so freely given, such a price for our redemption. Heaven's gates swing wide. All sufficient sacrifice, so freely given, such a price for our redemption. Heaven's gates swing wide. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, 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 break every There's an army rising up. There's an army rising up. There's an army rising up to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. There's an army rising up. I can see it rising. There's an army rising up. I can see it rising. There's an army rising up to break every chain, 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 break every There is power